Hello everyone, I'm Dakota, and today I'll be talking to you guys about my experiential project. So I did my project at the Center for Inquiry Community of Fort Lauderdale, and this is a group of atheists, rationalists, skeptics, humanists, mainly anyone that doesn't believe in God. I chose this group because I have had a belief in God my whole life. And over the past year, I have come to faith and had a relationship with God. Through this relationship, it is my coping mechanism that helps me get through each day. And it's hard for me to see a life without this relationship in terms of having hope and a way of getting through life. So I think that through going through this experience, I would learn ways that others would be able to cope through their life without having to believe in a God. Also at this meeting, it was located at a coffee shop. There is a man named James Rondi. He is a 90-something-year-old skeptic, and he was like the main leader of the meeting. Here's a little bit more information about him. So he's written several books. He has been in several TED Talks. If you're interested in learning more about him, you can check out this TED Talk, Homeopathy, Quackery, and Fraud. He's also written some books. Here we have Flim Flam. It's about his ideas of the delusions of psychics. And then we also have another book talking about his skepticism towards supernatural. As you can see through his picture, he already looks like he is not listening to anything that I have to say. And that was my experience that I had as I went to this meeting. So before I get in, I'll go to this first. So my personal biases towards atheists. The first thing that comes to mind is my previous relationship that I had with an atheist. That was my most recent relationship. And at first, the relationship was thriving because we had similar beliefs. So we both believed that there was something after life, a God, but we did not associate ourselves with any religion. We just were on similar terms. His parents were very religious, but he wasn't. Then as time went on, it seemed as if we had these similar mindsets that started to move like this. So I started to get closer to God. He started to get further away. And it came to the point where he didn't believe in anything, and I had found a relationship with God. This was difficult, and when we tried to have a conversation about our beliefs, it would always end very negatively. We would never be able to describe ourselves to the point where we were each able to be heard and respected. And I also had this idea that atheists happen to be hopeless since they don't believe in God, that they're cold, that they're robotic. I at least got that sense from my ex-boyfriend, and I thought that he was not very sensitive to those around him. But these are probably just my biases. Just because one person was like that doesn't believe in God doesn't mean that everyone is like that. I also had this sense that if I were to hang out with people that don't believe in God, or at least get close to people or have close relationships and friendships with people that don't believe in God, that I would somehow be corrupted. And today I still slightly believe that I can be negatively influenced by people that don't believe in God. I think that maybe their lack of belief might make me fluctuate in my faith, which is also something that is scary for me to think about. And it also has me questioning how I can strengthen my faith to the point of being able to have close relationships with people that don't believe in God and still be confident about my situation. So now I'll get into the structure of the meeting. There was about 20 people that attended. There were 15 atheists and 2 believers. Those believers were only me and one man that walked in with a cross. The only reason that I knew that he wasn't an atheist was because of that cross that he was wearing. So I guess I had assumed that he believed. But I knew that there were several people in the room that didn't believe, especially when one of the people in the room had asked, okay, so this is my first time here, and I'm kind of wondering what everyone believes right now. And then Randy answers, oh, well, the majority of us are atheists, so we're non-believers. And then just about everyone in the room nods their head and is like, yep. In that moment, I felt a lot of anxiety. I think it was because I was a minority in the group in that moment. I felt nauseous, and throughout the night, I felt like I had to defend myself, and I had to defend my beliefs. That came up when the man with the cross, so the other believer, started to tell one of his stories. And he had said that he was conducting an exercise on himself. Throughout this exercise, he had experienced an out-of-body experience where he stated that his soul lifted up out of his body, and he was able to look down and see his body laying on the floor, and that he had fallen back down into his body, and it felt like a sack of potatoes. So even though this story sounds a little extraordinary, a little out there, due to the fact that people haven't experienced it, it was the reactions that the atheists had in the group that had me cringing, because they were very disrespectful. At least that's what I had noticed. So several of them were rolling their eyes as this man was talking, or they'd be whispering to the person next to them. One of the men, the neurosurgeon in the group, had his head down on the table. He, like, this man had nothing of worth for him to hear. You know, I was a little surprised also that this was a free thinker group, yet there were so many people that couldn't handle thinking outside of their own belief system. You know, and then in that time I had to interject. So these people it kind of turned into a debate. So the man with the cross was telling a story, and then an atheist would start speaking and saying, oh, you know, sometimes if you follow an exercise, your brain can trick yourself into believing something that doesn't actually happen. And then they're also like, you know, lucid dreaming, when you have a dream and you can control your dream. And they just start giving all these scientific examples to back up their claims. And then I interject, and I'm like, okay, well, what if someone's completely conscious and they're not thinking about wanting to have an experience, but it still happens? I just had to ask it. And they just continued to bring up scientific claims. A lot of them were engineers, doctors, physicists. So they had some type of reasoning, some cognitive reasoning of backing up their claims that I wasn't educated to that realm in order to defend myself in the way that they were. So for the most part, I kept myself quiet in the meeting. I let them talk. And I had these questions in the back of my mind that I wanted to ask, but wasn't able to ask due to this constant debate back and forth. However, at the end of the meeting, I was able to talk to someone that I asked some of the questions to. But I'll get into that as we continue. So here are some of the questions that I formulated before attending the meeting. So those questions are, where do you find hope? How do you establish peace? What are your coping mechanisms? What do you believe happens after death? What experiences led you toward this decision of being an atheist? Have you ever been a believer? If so, what changed? Have you had any experiences with religion in the past? And my hypothesis with this last question was that there's probably several of these people that had grown up in a religious family that was very strict, and that they were then pulled themselves away from religion due to those negative experiences. And part of that thought process comes from when I was doing my genogram, and I talked to my parents who had both been forced to go to church, my mom who had been forced to go to Catholic school, and now neither of them attend church anymore or read the Bible or anything. So now I'm going to get into the conversation I had with the man that I spoke to, the atheist, at the end of the meeting. This was a man, his name's Larry, that attends the meetings on a monthly basis. So he's pretty much at every meeting. So I figured, oh, he must be an atheist since he comes to these meetings. And I decided to talk to him because he had given me a card with this quote on it when I walked into the meeting, and it states, "It is not the world that needs peace, it is people. When people in the world are at peace within, the world will be at peace." I couldn't help but agree with that quote. It's really about finding this inner peace within. And I was intrigued because I was like, well, that's cool that I can be a believer and you could not, but we can still have this same commonality and this idea of finding peace. So I started asking him questions, and I asked him one of the questions I had on one of those previous slides. What is your relationship with religion? How did you grow up with religion? And how do you think that affects people's idea of God? And he stated that religion puts a rift between people and God. I couldn't agree with that more. It actually reminded me of the series that my church has right now, which is called Religion, the Greatest Show. Here's the card for it. And a little explanation about it is, come experience religion, the greatest show, as we expose the lies that have been told and the damage that has been done in the name of religion. And we will discover the life that Jesus came to bring. So I thought this was a little ironic that my church happened to be giving out they had encouraged us to give out these cards to people that have not been to church before, or just anyone, and that my church was humble enough to have this series that bashed religion when my church is Christian, which is a religion. But at the same time, I was honored by this, and I think that that's one of the reasons why I continue going to this church. It's because they aren't exactly about having to enforce these rules or be a certain way. The main rule is to love others. So as I continued the conversation with Larry, I had some other questions that I asked him, such as, how do you find peace knowing that, or believing that, there isn't a God that exists after this life? And he stated several explanations of energy. So he states that everyone has energy within themselves, and that this energy is connected to the ground, and then when he dies, he is just going to let his energy flow into whatever form it goes into next, whether that be a tree, whether that be an ocean wave, he'll just move with it. So for him, it's not like there's a human form that is of guidance. It is more like a light. And I do find similarities between that. I didn't think that someone could be an atheist to still believe in energy in a way that brings so much hope to someone's life like that. I had thought that a lot of people who are atheists had coping mechanisms having to do with maybe a hobby, maybe they find peace through fishing, or maybe they find peace through traveling. And I was just blown away by this man's explanation. He says that God is within, God is love. He had a metaphor that he had described to me, stating that people are always looking for friends around them, outside of them, but they have to find the true friend, which is written on their heart, and that is friend with a capital F, and that's a friend of yourself. He was really inspirational. Although I do not believe in what he believes, I do find respect in what he believes. And I hope that I can take that type of curiosity, interest, and listen to my clients' stories in the therapy room. So now I'm going to go back to Religion is the Greatest Show, the series that my church is currently having, to share. This is a quote that the pastor has stated. He says, "Religious people love to look good. Jesus just loves people." So this is another emphasis of having peace in the world through respecting others, rather than following rules of religion in order to boast and look great and judge others due to the things that they're not doing. And it presents a twist to religion that I think a lot of people would turn towards if they were to experience religion in this open, warm, and welcoming way. So I think I did transform a great deal through this experience, not only this experience alone, but also my experience in this program. Mainly through the idea of recognizing that there are multiple realities, and that each person has a subjective truth due to their personal experiences. I don't get mad if someone doesn't believe in God. And I mean, at first, I do judge and I do have that tendency to be like, oh, like they're colder than me, or they don't have as much hope as me. I mean, the same thing can go for someone that sees me and sees that I believe in God. Oh, she's so optimistic and high-spirited and naive. So there's the judgments on both sides, but it's a matter of moving past those judgments and looking into how the person created that belief in the first place. So for me, this time a year ago, I felt completely different. So I have always believed in a higher being, believed in God, but I'd never had that relationship with God. And I didn't establish that relationship through other people influencing me. People would tell me to go to church. People would tell me to read the Bible. I would be brought to church and roll my eyes. I would tap my feet. I wouldn't listen to the message. I didn't listen until I had a personal experience one day, a personal relationship that formed. And no one was influencing me. So I recognize that if someone doesn't believe in God, then that's okay. Because they didn't have that relationship. So how can they know to believe? These people have their experiences that brought them to believe what they believe in. And those experiences can be altered at any moment due to the doors that are open for them. So as I'm in the therapy room, I want to be able to recognize and accept and honor people's beliefs rather than judge them. And I don't want to have to sway them towards a certain belief, but I want to be able to open up paths and doors that may lead them towards a certain decision without having to push them towards it. Throughout it, it's just a main idea of being curious throughout the whole process and opening up possibilities. So that's the main thing that I learned through this experience, to just be open-minded, recognize that everyone has their own perception through their experiences. The neurosurgeon that sat next to me in the meeting didn't believe in God, and he believed that it was ridiculous that his clients and the families of his patients would pray when he knew that time and time again for years, no matter how much these people would pray, there are certain people, there are certain patients that died regardless. So for him, with his experiences, he's recognized that there is no need to believe in a God. So, and I do respect that now, that everyone has those beliefs. It's okay, and we can all get along. That's basically the end, and it was a good moment.